계속해서 다음 발표 함께 보도록 하겠습니다. 독일 수소 수입 전략에 대해서 독일 연방경제기후보호부 팔크 브메케 과장님께서 수고해 주실 텐데요. 현재 독일에 계신 관계로 과장님을 화상으로 연결해 보도록 하겠습니다.
Well, thank you very much, and good morning, good day to you all. Thank you very much for inviting me to this very interesting discussion and your conference. My name is Falk Bömeke. As you mentioned, I'm the head of division for international energy and climate cooperation. And obviously we are also looking very much into hydrogen exports and hydrogen imports to Germany and partner countries in the ramp up of a hydrogen market. Because that for us is the final goal, that we don't only have a gas market but also a hydrogen market. Before I start with my presentation, let me mention the main reason why we are looking at hydrogen. Obviously, and it was mentioned before in some other presentations, it is climate neutrality. We have a climate neutrality goal in Germany for 2045. So we think hydrogen is an important part of reaching climate neutrality, and obviously it needs to be sustainable hydrogen, and I will come back to that in my presentation. We see hydrogen an investment into the future of the wealth and also our society, and therefore a very important part of the transformation of our industry in Germany and in the European Union. Equally important, and that was also mentioned in the presentation we just heard, is that there is security of supply, and Germany had to learn a very hard lesson what it means to not have security of supply when it comes to gas deliveries because of the Russian war in the Ukraine. Also, we need to make sure that hydrogen is affordable because as Korea, also Germany wants to keep their industry and even expand the industry. So we need to make sure that the new gas, the renewable gas of the future is affordable and sustainable. Let me get into a small presentation here. We have passed a national hydrogen strategy in Germany already in 2020, and we have updated this national hydrogen strategy last year. And within that national hydrogen strategy, we have decided to also have a specific import strategy for hydrogen, because we know because of geographical reasons and a densely populated area in Germany, that it won't be economic to produce all the green hydrogen that we need in Germany itself. So we will stay, just like Korea, we will stay an import country when it comes to energy carriers. Therefore we are working on that import strategy. It's not finished yet. It's in interministerial consultations at the moment, but we hope that it will be published until the summer. One important part of this import strategy is the decision on what color of hydrogen or what carbon intensity the hydrogen should have. There is a lot of discussion going on in Europe and in Germany. Our national hydrogen strategy clearly states that we consider green hydrogen in the long term as the only sustainable option, because we want to phase out and transition away from fossil fuels, and what we call blue hydrogen, so natural gas based hydrogen, is a fossil option in the end. So we are looking at, when we're talking about supporting projects, we are looking at green hydrogen. I should also mention that obviously our markets in Europe and in Germany are open to any kind of hydrogen. So if you find an off-taker, then the market is open and it's not prohibited to sell and buy blue hydrogen or any kind of other hydrogen. But there will be regulations and there will be quotas, and those will usually require, and that is the European Commission's decision, that it is green hydrogen, and with green we mean hydrogen coming from water electrolyzers. The strategy, the hydrogen strategy, covers quite a large number of sectors and fields of action, which makes it very complex. But we think it's necessary because it affects the whole economy. And you see here the sectors that we're looking at as use cases all have different different bases where they're coming from and what they actually need. And when we talk about hydrogen, we mean any kind of pure hydrogen, but also hydrogen derivatives like ammonia, like methanol, like sustainable aviation fuels. And obviously it's important to understand which sector in the industry needs which product in the end. And then we can make a decision through which infrastructure these hydrogen or hydrogen derivatives should come to Germany. And that brings me to the next slide. It is important. We're building up a new market, and a new market also requires new infrastructure. And we are convinced that the infrastructure needs to be provided or at least helped by the governments and support programs. And there is basically two main infrastructure routes. One is the pipeline route for pure hydrogen coming from our European neighbors. And the other one is imports via ships. And we would expect that derivatives that I mentioned will partly or maybe mainly come by ships. So we also need to look at port infrastructure to make sure that in the end these products actually reach the off-takers, which might not be in the north of Germany where our harbors are, our ports are, but further south, west and east. The hydrogen applications, so where do we need hydrogen? We see the main or first off-takers in industry. That would be steel production or chemical industry that already use hydrogen at the moment. As we speak, we're using over 50 terawatt hours of hydrogen already in Germany, mainly in the chemical sector. That is at the moment all what we call gray hydrogen, so based on natural gas but without carbon capture. First of all, we would like to replace these CO2 intensive hydrogen with green hydrogen, but then we also expect an increase in our hydrogen demand because of the transformation of industry, which is happening as we speak, which is supported with billions of euros from the European level and the German level. In transport, it's pretty obvious that we can't electrify planes or heavy shipping. Where we see an electrification option like passenger cars, maybe also trucks, we think the electrification is the more efficient way of decarbonizing, but where it's not possible, we obviously need synthetic fuels, sustainable aviation fuels, for example, or ammonia, methanol for the shipping industry. We are also looking at the power sector, and that was also mentioned in the presentation we just heard for Korea. So we're looking at the power sector for what we call peaking power plants that will have to run with clean hydrogen in the future to reach climate neutrality. And therefore, this will also be a part of the demand side in Germany for hydrogen. And then in the heating sector, this is still a little bit under discussion in the German context. We think that mainly we should look at heat pumps and also electrification options. But obviously, there will remain room also for gases to be used for heating, and then we come back to hydrogen. It is important, as we all know, that we need effective framework conditions for this ramp up of the new market. The new market means we have new suppliers, we have new off-takers, and we have new infrastructure. So we're really building something new here. And we want to do it preferably on a global scale because that brings out efficiencies and also competition, which then leads to the most efficient way of distributing hydrogen around the world. And I think with Korea, we have a good partner in this endeavor, and the German-Korean Energy Partnership is also looking into these topics when it comes to framework conditions like certification, but also things that I mentioned. What are we actually looking for? The demand in Germany, I already mentioned, we have 50 to 55 terawatt hours of current demand, which we want to replace, and we see an increasing demand in our scenarios until 2030 to 95 to 130 terawatt hours total demand, and we expect that about 2/3 of this will be imported. So that dimension shows you that it does make sense to look at an import strategy and look at partners around the world, trading partners for this new commodity. Where does the demand in Germany come from? It's, as I mentioned, mainly industry players. You see the four large steel manufacturers in Germany at the top. They will need pure hydrogen for direct reduction of iron, but also the chemical industry, BASF being the largest chemical company in the world, and they will need different types. They will need pure hydrogen, but also methanol, ammonia, and so on. And you see some other names. So this is what is happening now. The steel industry is being transformed, as I mentioned, also with quite some support from the government through financial support. Coming more or less to the end, but for me and for my job, the most important component, and that is international cooperation. Because it doesn't make any sense to try to make this transformation with hydrogen alone, and for the German case, it's sheerly impossible to do that. So in our bilateral energy cooperation and partnerships that we have, hydrogen plays a very important role, and you see a little map here who we are mainly talking to at the moment. It was also mentioned in one of the presentations I saw this morning that there is an increasing number of hydrogen strategies around the world. Some have export strategies. We are working on an import strategy, and we try to make sure that this actually matches. We have some instruments, financial support instruments that we can also use in the international context. Our most known one, I would argue, is H2 Global. And to simplify a little bit what you see in a more complex way on this slide, we are looking at buying hydrogen or hydrogen derivatives for 10 years, so giving a 10-year contract, offtake contract that enables the producer to plan and then get final investment decision, get the business case ready for financial support. And then we will sell this product in yearly auctions in the European or German market. If there is a difference between the buying price and the selling price, the German government has offered to cover that gap for a period of 10 years' time. For a certain amount, obviously, we have in the first auction dedicated 900 million euros for that, but we have a total volume of that program of 4.4 billion euros for a 10 or 12-year period. So we can't support all the imports, but we can help first movers and the first projects to get online and really build up these value chains. And that brings me to the end of my presentation. I thank you again for inviting me and looking forward to the discussion.